Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's album review. Today, we're going to be reviewing The Warning. So, does that ring a bell?
It does indeed, yes. If you'd asked me a couple of weeks back, probably not, but yes, now it does.
So, yeah, just yesterday, we recorded a reaction to The Warning. Um, again, I don't know which is going to be up first on our channel, whether this review will be up or whether it will be the song that we reacted to. So, let me show you the comments for this particular request. So, came through from Timberwolf. We were doing Justin Timberlake, and then we talked about Timberland in the last review. Now we've got Timberwolf. So um, this was regarding our Royal Blood album that you commented on. Agree about the similarity of their songs, because I remember we were talking about everything just sounded the same with Royal Blood. I throw one of their songs into a mix and it works. A Steady Diet does not. So here's a suggestion for you: The Warning. It is three sisters whose music has deep roots in classic hard rock, but some songs are mixed with grunge, punk, metal, or other genres. Try Evolve or Disciple if you want heavy psychotic for punk, and Revenants for a soulful ballad. That was the one that we did, Revenants, reacted to. If you want an entire album, Queen of the Murder Scene is a concept album that follows a girl from unrequited love to obsession, stalking, murder, and then the fight against her evil side for her soul. Okay, so that's what we're going to be reviewing today. Now, I have just very quickly found something about that, which we won't go into too much, but I will quickly share the screen just to show you. So this is the introduction for it. That's interesting. It's actually from Timberwolf. Oh,
Oh, wow.
same guy, I think. um, so it goes through the whole kind of story. The prologue is the first track, then Dust to Dust, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and it finishes at the end. So if you want, I can send you the link to this, so that when you are listening to it, you'll be able to follow this and understand maybe the story better if you
Yes,
want.
please.
And some extra additional notes as well. So, as for the album itself, in terms of the length, I have found it on Spotify. So again, I'll quickly share that without trying to take up too much time. So it's pretty standard length for an album. 13 songs, 51 minutes, 17 seconds. Track lengths are not overly long, not too short either. So nice length of songs. So yeah, that is what we're going to be reviewing. So Brett, you looking forward to it?
Yeah, I have to say I am, but I am again, going to keep sort of learning because I know there might be elements of it that I might not sort of enjoy with genre and stuff. But the fact, there's going to be a sort of a background story to it, which I think will probably help, especially songs I might not like so much because I know we did that one track of theirs, which I can imagine is probably an anomaly. They're all not going to be similar to that. But the fact there is elements, they have done elements of that already that could be on this album, makes it quite intriguing. So yeah, to really have that sort of inside story with it, I think is going to definitely help. And yeah, actually, I'm looking forward to see what they sort of bring. Really,
Yeah, likewise. Again, I'm not sure if all the songs are going to be to my liking in terms of the genre, but I am certainly interested and intrigued by it, especially as it's a concept album and there's a story going on. And as the comment said, with the other that group, the Royal Blood, how that was all very similar. it sounds like this one probably won't be. It's going to be a bit of a mix of different stuff going on, which is always a good thing. So yeah, be nice to see what this is like. So we're going to head off now and listen to it, and we're going to be back with you guys in just a moment. So we've now listened to the album. So like with what we usually do, if you've seen our channel before, we normally head over to Brett, who gives us his insight into the album. So do the same again today, please.
I'll do my best, and I normally waffle on, and because I don't have sort of precise exact notes with this to give my trade secrets away. So the warning, Queen of the Murder Scene. Really loved the fact it was a concept album. So from our introduction, we obviously there was a link where we had sort of insight to the songs, which I thought was a really big help and really helped with the album. We also had listened to one of the Warnings songs previous, which was like a sort of slow ballad. So kind of knew they had that in their locker as well. So on the whole, I actually quite like this album. There's a couple of negatives that I'll try and explain best I can. But this, even though, like I said, we knew what they were capable of beforehand, we knew it was going to be a rock album. Yes, it was a rock sort of album, but it wasn't, as I'd say, too rocky or too intense. It was kind of listenable in the sense of, and I think where I put with some of the songs, due to the singing voice that she's got, is sort of really, really clear with that. So it wasn't like the voice is more overpowering than the music, or the music more overpowering than the voice. And there was some variation. Now, this is going to sound very contradictory, I know. Variations to the song, but at the same time, I think a lot of the rocky ones, there wasn't as such. And I think maybe that's me really being picky into it in terms of where we had the story and it was telling the story, and I felt some of the earlier songs and what part of the story was telling, those sort of songs were very similar to the story it was telling at the end, even though they were very different scenarios. I said, unless you know the album, that probably doesn't make sense, but hopefully Lee gets that as well. I also found, even though I said there was variation, the songs were quite simple. There wasn't a standout song. This is a concept album to be listened as a whole and know the whole sort of story that they're trying to tell with it. But there was one sort of standout song that I would potentially put on a playlist. But really, I think all of this kind of has to be listened together, really. So, as a whole, I did like it. I thought it was going to be. But I still thought it could have been, personally for me, just some slight improvements.
Right, so thank you for that. I think we're going to have a Backstreet Brett quote. There wasn't a standout song, but there was one standout song.
The majority were the same and not standout, except for one. But even that one, yeah. So right. Yeah, it's very.
So yeah, I actually agree with a lot of what you say there. I also quite like the album. Let me just get my notes up. That'll help me. So the notes to each song, when I say the notes, that document that we found on Google was really, really useful because it just helped, give meaning to each song. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had a clue what was going on. Because we've done concept albums before on this channel, and I had no idea what was going on. To me, it was just a song after another song. It was just could have been in any order. Made no sense to me at all because I didn't have any. I'm not very good at understanding lyrics anyway, and just didn't know what they were about. But with this one, having that information about each song was a bit of a game changer, to be honest. So I'd say because of that, I generally quite enjoyed listening to it, although not every song. In general, it was more. It's what you kind of touched on this as well. You said something similar. to me, this was kind of like more than listenable rock music. It's not the kind of rock music that you kind of have to have a real, it's not like, how can I explain it? It's kind of open to most people, I'd say, even if you're not too much rock. I think it's, again, probably like what you said, maybe because of her voice or the voices of the singers, just made it quite listenable. And there were album. So I know it's saying that the Rocky stuff did sound similar, but for me, I definitely found some songs and others which we'll go through in course. So let's begin with the first track, which was Dust to Dust. Kind of feels quite rocky, but at the same time, it was quite easy to listen to. I put it here, maybe due to her singing style. And then it became very fast with some Spanish vocals, which turned out to be the Spanish preacher because of the notes. And this, I just thought this wasn't bad, and actually I quite enjoyed it. It was a good solid start to the album for me.
Yeah, I agree with what you say there. A good sort of solid opening song. I generally found a lot of my notes didn't vary in some ways because I said that there were variations on, they were different, but not massively in the same ways. But in this one, so I put the artist here, Evanescence is kind of the feeling I got from this, and as I said in the intro and you agreed with, like I think it's because her voice is actually really good, it's really clear. It helps to make the song sort of understandable and enjoyable to listen to. Saying that, it wasn't until I looked at the lyrics, and there was a point where with the chorus where I think it's meant to be the lines were "Our bones will rust," and for some reason I kept hearing like bowls of rice. Why are they talking about bowls of rice in the song? But obviously, it wasn't that there at all. But yeah, I think a good opening song.
Okay, so I do apologise for the connection issues we're having. Let's continue on to the second track then, which was Crimson Queen. So this is a completely different type of song, much slower. I like the style of this song. This is the beginning of the obsession. I like the chorus where it suddenly becomes loud and clear. Now, as always, I struggle to understand all the lyrics, but that's on me. That's just my personal weakness. Nothing on the singers here. So, yeah, it was all right.
Yeah, so this is what was classed as start of chapter 2. So the song before was like the prologue, and it's sort of like the first song of this story. That's why I think it was that little bit slow, which I like you really enjoyed that sort of element from there. And like you, even though it had the meaning behind the song, still couldn't quite pick up on some of the lyrics. I did write a couple of lyrics down, but they're not that sort of important to it there. And yeah, sort of the start of this sort of story of this obsession coming in. So yeah, a really sort of good song. And again, like with all the other songs, her singing voice really, really good, and is one of the strong points of most of the songs on the album.
Okay, so the next one was this time it was more rocky, this particular song. Kind of similar to the first song, Dust to Dust, although not as pop sounding, maybe not as pop friendly as that first song, Dust to Dust. It still feels very listenable, though, to people who aren't particularly into heavy music. I've described it as like it's not a real word, but the fieriest song so far in terms of like, it's the most maybe intense song out of the three. The ending has a long rocky instrumental and then switches to the piano, which I thought was a nice touch as well.
Yeah, again, sort of echoing the same sort of things you put there. I put here very more similar to the first song rather than the song before. Even though it's really quite rocky, upbeat, and intense, it still feels quite listenable to listen to. And again, it's having this sort of good story, which was sort of more focused on from there. Really, was it amazing? No, not great, but I mean, it still was what it was. And as you also said, this sort of piano sort of ending just to give it more sort of an atmosphere, maybe to the song.
So that brings us on to track 4, which is The One. So very clear lyrics at the start, even for someone like me. Wasn't expecting such a strong chorus based on how the song was going. So it took me by surprise. Very much this particular song felt very much like an unfolding story, which it is because it's a concept album. So every song tells a story. But I don't know, just something about this particular song felt very kind of story-like. I quite like the upbeat chorus. I thought that really worked. I thought this was a fairly decent song and the best song so far on the album.
I agree. I think maybe because this is like a real sort of maybe turning point of the story, you could sort of think that this is the sort of darker stage of things sort of coming through. And like I felt like the lyrics were coming out. I've put here sort of slow, pleasant, but as upbeat at times where it got rocky stuff, it still had this sort of kind of underlying sort of dark feeling to it as well, really. Really like it, and I think it's sort of a good blend between sort of the slow stuff that they do and sort of the rocky stuff as well. But yeah, I totally get the sort of more focus on the lyrics and actually sort of telling the story. And then we had a bit of like the piano as well, which again just put things all together as well. And I just put a quote here about sort of how good her singing actually is. And I've been saying it from the start, but I think it was at this point, it was like, this is my realization going, I think the reason this is really enjoyable to listen to is because I think of her singing voice.
Okay. So then we come on to the 5th song, which is Stalker. This was a slow start and it suddenly took off. Rocky, but certainly not over the top. Had a fairly clear chorus, easy to pick up on, and had this kind of shouty, aggressive style of singing. And it's understandable why, given the circumstances of what's happening at this moment in the story. I probably prefer the previous song, The One, but this one isn't bad.
Yeah, I put sort of lots of similarities to the previous song before. Definitely had that sort of rocky parts to it as well, but also had that sort of slow part at the start as well. And again, because of seeing the backstory of what was going on, I picked up on some more of the lyrics coming into it as well. And I said, even without that, I kind of feel, like I said, that's what I was saying was good about having sort of the backstory of it, because it does help to try and sort of really feel, and I got that sort of same feeling from this song, that sort of turning, and it's getting that little bit more dark. Even though the song before, I said it's starting to feel a bit darker, you start to get a bit more now in terms of the rockiness of the songs, really.
Okay, so the next one then was Red Hands Never Fade. So I guess this is, from what I remember, like just after the murder. So it was interesting. I thought the murder happened quite early on. It was the fifth song when it happened.
Yes.
So yeah, Red Hands Never Fade. So it's fast from the off. It was that kind of head boppy type of song. I was expecting this to be a slower song because of the remorseful situation. Because before I listened to it, I read about the song. You know, the person's remorseful, and I just didn't expect it to be as kind of upbeat as this. So the song isn't bad at all, but just didn't come across as a remorseful song based on two things: based on the lyrics that I was picking up, which wasn't that much, but I didn't hear anything particularly remorseful about it, and the pace of the song. So good song, but just expected it to be different based on the situation.
might as well just move on to the next song because it is pretty much word for word what I've sort of written here. I said, so the song here is a real toe tapper, head bopping. Really like the song, but like you, I will say I didn't deliberately purposely wanted to read the next line. Just so happened because it was on the same page. I think it was only a short bit and seeing sort of remorseful and there was going to be a bow, and just felt like the song didn't really reflect that at all. It was, I said, I wasn't expecting that at all, especially when I knew they had done slow stuff already on the album and they'd done slow stuff before. I really was expecting a totally different song, as you said there. But as you also said, a good song. I said it was a toe tapper, it was a head bopper, but just not what I was going to expect. That's all.
Yeah, so what I was generally doing was I was pausing the songs at the end and then moving on to like read about the next one, and then I'd play it just so I kind of knew what to expect, what was coming. Next track was The Sacrifice. A slow start this time. And for me, from track 7 onwards for a bit, which we'll talk about, this is kind of where the album went a bit downhill for me. So not really making much of an impression on me, this song. It was a bit of a change up towards just before minute 3, which I thought helped the song. But overall, not one of the better songs on the album. Just didn't really get into this one very much.
Yeah, I was going to agree with your point there, and that's probably where I was sort of where I said at the start, where some of the songs sort of kind of felt the same, and maybe it's because maybe the killing happens quite early on, and we had more of this sort of the bad side sort of taking over, but you've got a lot of tracks left to sort of tell that story of as well. It's all kind of sort of the same, and this is all the start of it, sort of the turning bad, turning evil, feeling the dark side of it here. So I think a lot of songs have the same thing. They all have maybe a generally sort of slower introduction starts, where it's maybe like the good side, and then suddenly it's the evil bad side coming through, where the song gets quite rocky. And again, it wasn't such a bad song. There were better ones we've listened so far on the album, so it was okay. But yeah, just not as good as the others, really.
Okay, so next up we had Sinister Smiles. So some interesting parts to this song. It's okay, but not one of my favourites on the album. So that's all I managed to put for that one.
Yeah, again, I did say this was a bit of a head boppy type one and a bit of a toe tapper in some regards. Again, I was just more interested with the sort of story coming through, really. But I said there is quite a lot of similarities with the previous track and the next sort of ones coming along, really. So I also haven't got too much to say on that one either.
Then we had Dull Knives. So quite liking the start of this one, some good clear lyrics, but then not liking it as much once it's really got going and became quite rocky. So the quieter speaking part I thought was quite good with a nice beat, just not as keen when the song livens up. So overall, our favourite word's probably a bit too rocky for me, this one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've kind of put the same here as I did for the one we agreed on, that track 6 with the Red Hands. Okay, so I've seen this scene a bit before, and we're now talking about sort of self-harming stuff. I thought it might have been a different kind of tone and vibe to this particular song, but it wasn't. And I think that's what I felt was sort of a bit quite the same. It's like, oh, okay, this is kind of this. Even though these are very distinctive, different things that are going on, it kind of sounds. I know probably need to appreciate the lyrics a bit more and read through the lyrics to really get that side of things there. But I think the music can have a bit from there. And as I say, I can't say much different than I've said for others. Again, rocky song, but it's still kind of still very listenable. Just being too much of the same with the others.
So then we had Queen of the Murder Scene, the name of the album. I didn't particularly like this style of song due to the style of singing. Difficult to understand the lyrics, but again, that's my weakness. And all I can say, really, I just preferred some of the songs earlier on in the album.
I actually didn't mind this one in some parts. I think because the sort of feeling I got from this one, it had more sort of I put in sort of musical theatre and a bit sort of over the top kind of feel, which in the positive way, like I said, because it's telling the story and there's something a bit different. At least there was even though it's still quite rocky, it's quite intense, it still at least was a little bit different to the other regular Rocky songs. So even though it wasn't as good as some of the other songs, I liked it because it was a bit different. It had that kind of different feel to it and felt more sort of as part of trying to tell the story.
Okay. Then we had Psychotic. So I thought, okay, this one sounds better. Interesting backing voices, almost kind of like sounded like kids. And I like the fast beat. Again, don't have anything more to say on that one.
Um, yeah, so we're now hearing some of the other singers sort of come through this one. Yeah, it was strange for me, but I didn't mind it. I thought at least again brought something a bit different to it. I've also put in here like Japanese rock because we obviously done a few like bandmaids and other sort of Japanese rock, and I had that kind of sort of feeling from it. Again, very in a good way. Like the others, bit of a toe tapper, but again, still quite similar to some of the previous ones already.
Okay, so we're coming towards the end of the album. So the penultimate song, Hunter. This was heavy from the off. I like the clear singing part before the song really builds up, which is kind of like what I guess I was saying about one of those previous songs, Dull Knives. However, this song isn't as heavy as it threatened to be at the start. I thought it was going to be a real heavy one. In the end, it wasn't. And I actually thought this one was not bad.
Yeah, I haven't got a lot to say on this one. Again, my main thing was that so this is we're now talking about almost like the death parts of herself, really. So it was reference about like the Grim Reaper and stuff. And again, I've just put focus on about a different sort of Bible tone could have been with this one. So sort of what you were saying there as well. I think actually this one, especially before we get to the last song as part of the song, could have maybe went a really intense sort of the rock parts and really make that sort of climax bit. Because again, I knew we were coming to the end. But yeah, it didn't sort of happen with that. And it didn't really stand out as much of a song on the album.
So that brings us to the last song, the end. So I think quite often when we do these reviews, we kind of, like the last song to kind of finish things off nicely, especially with this being a concept album. So for me, the piano start sounded pretty somber in terms of just the style of the song. But in terms of me liking the song, I thought, okay, this sounds promising. Then I was like, okay, this is really impressive so far. And it started to rock up a bit, so I was getting a little bit worried. How much was it going to rock up? Thought it had a really good chorus. And here's the thing. I felt this sounded like another well-known song in parts, and I didn't know what the song was called. I was thinking of. I knew like some of the words, so I started typing in these random words into Google, and I found the song. It's Zombie, the Cranberries. And I listened to the song Zombie, the Cranberries, and it sounded so similar. Like, there's definitely parts it certainly felt like they'd sort of taken parts from it. Whether that was intentional or not, I don't know. And to me, it's one of the best songs on the album, up there with The One. I haven't listened to these back. I'd probably put this in first place, just ahead of The One, but I would have to listen back. So I thought it was a really good ending to the album. Just a really good, nice song. And according to the notes as well, this was sung by the woman who sung the first song, Dust to Dust, which was also pretty decent. So yeah, good end to the album.
Yeah. Oh, and that note, I didn't know. Maybe I missed that. I thought maybe it was just one of the singers who just sang the last line potentially, sang the first line on the first song, and then potentially the last song on this last song. But you're right, maybe in the whole song. I don't know. Again, I can't really say anything different that you kind of said. There you added bits there. So as soon as those first couple of notes were playing on the piano, I was like, okay, I think this is going to be a good song. I think good end to the album. And I maybe regretted saying that because I thought, oh, you know what, it's probably going to start that, but then it might rock up or change too much throughout. But I'm glad it didn't. And Yeah, like you. I didn't even think about sort of looking up the lyrics or trying to, but I wrote down the Cranberry Zombie, and that's what kind of reminded me of the band The Ends of going. Actually, yeah, forget Evanescence, not Evanescence that they remind me of. The Cranberries is a better comparison to also quite rocky, even though they also did some quite slow and some good covers of songs and stuff. But I did realise that some of the lyrics may have seemed quite similar from that as well. But that's exactly, I picked up on the Cranberry Zombie song show, which is a song I also really, really like.
Yeah.
And yeah, a really, really good ending to song. This is when I said about, I said my contradictory thing, no standout songs apart from a standout song. As the majority of the songs weren't stand out, but this was, yeah, as you can imagine, was my standout one. And I would happily have this separately on the playlist, but I think it just works well on the album, and at least the album ended up on a nice high, which was great.
Yeah. So, for summing up, for me, as I said at the beginning, I enjoyed this one. How can I say it? Like, to a decent level. I think especially because of we knew it was going to be some kind of rock. Okay, we had reacted to one of their songs before, which wasn't particularly rocky. I wasn't sure how it was going to go, but yeah, like I said, it was a bit of a mixed bag. There were some songs towards maybe the second half of the album that I wasn't so keen on. Thought it started off quite well, went a bit downhill, but had a really good ending in terms of the actual songs themselves. But I enjoyed, following along to the story as well, which definitely made a big difference, for sure. Because there was a focus on something. We kind of knew what the song was about. I was trying to listen out for certain lyrics, and kind of that definitely helped. So, yeah, I think this can go down as a thumbs up and a success, for sure. So, yeah, pretty good. Brett, what about you?
Yeah, again, I don't want to repeat too much of what I've said already. But yeah, I agree with you. I think overall a good sort of thumbs up. Could have been personally some improvements on just sort of personal side of things to it. There will definitely be one I'll happily sort of listen to again. And I like the concept. I think maybe what might need to do for the next time, not having to look too much into it, is probably to either listen to it for what it is without concentrating too much on that, or the complete other side of it and actually have the full lyrics sort of up with it. And because I think a lot of the songs, they did quote some of the lyrics in the write up there, so I think there's probably more to the lyrics to this that play a part as well. And like I said, I found a song that I really, really liked that would go on a playlist, so that's always a big plus from doing an album review.
Yeah, okay. So thank you very much for the request. Is it Timberwolf? Is that his name? There's some numbers after it as well. And thank you for the write up as well. So I think that was also you who did it. So see you for the next one. Keep the requests coming. We always need album requests, album review requests. They're never as popular as our reactions. Anyway, that's it from us. We'll see you again soon for the next one. Take care. Goodbye.